Hello, this is Joy Gilfilen with JoyTalk Radio, and I'm president of the Restorative CommUnity Coalition. And as president, I realized that it might be really useful to do a recording today to set the stage for what's coming down the road. We are all facing an election tomorrow night, an election for President of the United States 2020. And people are experiencing an enormous amount of distress right now. I've been talking with my friends Ava Sikowski and Irene Morgan about the different kinds of stress and distress that people are facing, and the amount of, it's almost like we're going through a civic trauma together as a community, and it's created a kind of civic shock and shock waves that are rippling out through our community in different ways. And it sort of mimics the complex post-traumatic stress disorder work that I did when I started interviewing people who had gone through the jail and justice system. And I noticed that when our lives are in real upheaval, people get distressed, and many of us respond in very different ways. So I wanted to call them on the phone and do a quick recording here and say, what are the things that we want to look at and be aware of so that we don't think we're all going crazy during this period of the election stress? Because, you know, we've noticed that there's things happening on television, anger, violence, you know, people are acting out, there's behaviors that are happening, and it's because we're dealing with trauma. So I'd like to invite Ava Sikowski and Irene Morgan to introduce themselves briefly, and then we're going to come back together and talk about what are the kinds of act outs that we experience when we're dealing with deep trauma and distress in a civic community like this. So Ava, would you like to start briefly and talk about some of the things that you've witnessed in the last couple of days that actually provoked me to want to have this conversation?
Well, I'm Ava Sikowski, and I'm a marketing coordinator, marketing manager, and that's been my career for 20-something years. But prior to that, I had another life, and I did do social services, and I was involved in that, mostly nonprofits for the first 20 years of my working life. And I think what I've seen, and I guess I'll just talk about myself, what I've seen in myself is a bit of regression. Is my tactics for dealing with stress have been reduced to things that, you know, how they always say that when we're in stress, we revert to old ways of dealing with things that can be very childish, really. And what I found myself doing in the last couple of days, just very consciously but sort of unconsciously, was actually bargaining with God. And I don't think I've done that consciously, other than when someone was dying, right? That you actually, kind of start the process of the bargaining process. And I was actually bargaining with God, thinking of things I could give up, like God would care. I gave up stuff.
Yeah, if things came out well, like your prayer type thing, and you're negotiating with him to keep us all safe. Like, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. And, and I guess, I'm looking at myself sort of as a Democrat, and the amount of stress that I've been experiencing, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of the election and what that means to me, what I feel that means for our country, and the amount of stress that I felt about that toppled together with the pandemic. And then you just run the course of stress in life, right? I feel that it contributes to a lot of regression. At least I've seen it in me. I've seen it in my own patterns. I've seen it in other people's patterns, people talking about, things like drinking too much, people being too angry, too hungry, all of the twos, the TOOs, right?
Sure.
So that's really what I've been seeing.
And then Irene, to switch it a different way, because, as a Democrat or as a Republican, we're both looking at the election going, whoever wins, we're still in distress, and we've still got to heal our country, and we've got to put ourselves back online, because we're dealing with civic issues, we're dealing with civil rights issues, with violence in the streets, with excessive amount of incarceration, and people who are having to re-enter the world after a civic crisis that's somewhat similar to what you've dealt with as president of the, or not as president, but as the founder of the Restorative CommUnity Coalition, where you're working with people whose lives got upset, and now they're having to re-enter the world with a different career, a different background, speak to that for a bit as to how you see the similarities, and what are the kinds of things that people go through, like confusion or split brain type stuff.
That's a tall order.
Well, the typical things that happen when people come out of prison. I know that there's a confusion and a disorientation and a disconnection, but what are you seeing?
There's a definite disconnect because, and I'm a counselor and a therapist, and I've always been aware that there's something going on in our society. Things just didn't feel right, and I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what. So I just kept snooping around for most of my life. And what I've realized that especially people that have been in or brushed the justice system have had experiences that definitely disconnect them and confuse them. They have just experienced something they never expected in our country, because most of it doesn't make sense, and there are many, many, many barriers that prevent them from being successful, and it doesn't make common sense, and it drives people crazy from my perspective.
So it's a little like the world gets turned upside down for them, which is similar but different, of course, because people who are going with COVID crisis and isolation and separation and social distancing and economic changes, it's sort of, you see a sort of similarity, perhaps.
It's very similar. It's very similar. It's we have no control over it. We're being told what to do. There's some who are obeying to the strictest rules, and there are others who are resisting any kind of restrictions at all. And so there's all this turmoil and havoc and trauma causing. And it's and then, like you said earlier, or we have talked earlier about then you throw the election in the middle of it, and it's hyper confusing. And I've seen some pretty well-rounded people just not be able to handle this at all. And so we have a tall order to fulfill for each of us, and it's doable because we're going to get through this, and we may as well get through it as quickly, as simply as we can, and that's being in control of you and your life, and how we can actually do this together. So regardless of what side you're on.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that I got to looking at as I was going into, what are the social, economic, and civic impacts of this crisis on us, and as things are amplifying up with anger and unrest in the streets, and the issues of police brutality and systemic racism and economic imbalances and poverty and homelessness, and we've got problems. I mean, we've got genuine, real problems. And so the genuine, real problems are rumbling underneath the surface as the political rhetoric has gone up, and as the different factions in our political arena are colliding on the news media. People are becoming hyper reactive, and it's the same kind of thing that you find anytime you get people in a distressful situation and anger starts to mount. People become hyper reactive. So what I've been witnessing is hyper reactivity, hypersensitivity, people arguing at the drop of the hat, people going into denial. They don't want to talk about things, or they do want to talk about things, but then they just yell and at each other. You know, there's like this civic kind of trauma that that happens like at a car accident when everybody goes bad or things go wrong in a, you know, in a disaster and everybody's running around. You know, in my language, it's like running around like a chicken with your head cut off. But it's like we're just running around and we don't know what to do. And so we shame, blame, or game whoever could have been at fault, and we can't get grounded. And so I'm witnessing it as a form of civic distress, and like our people that are bureaucratic leaders, they default to old-fashioned behaviors. People who are used to going to war and fighting, they pick fights. People who are used to avoiding and getting drunk or addicted or, you know, checking out and just playing video games or playing computers or gambling, they go into those kinds of withdrawals and those kinds of addictive behaviors. And the fact of the matter is, as a community, we're going to go through something in the next 24 to 72 hours, which is the election of a new president. And that's going to change the life. I mean, we've already changed life in America. And I think people are, after the votes come in, they're sort of like, I mean, you guys can speak to it yourselves, but there will be a letdown. You know, the immediate fear of who's going to win or lose goes through. And then we've got 3 months to get through to January. Then we've got 6 months to get through into the springtime. And then we're dealing with the fallout of an economy that's been collapsing. We're dealing with the fallout of food and shelter and homelessness and poverty. So what would you guys talk about when you're saying, okay, if we're going to be sitting and watching the television for the next 24 to 72 hours or talking with our friends, what are the things we can do to take care of ourselves and take care of others just under this crisis period? Like, what are you going to be doing? For example, my mother-in-law called me and she said, you know, I don't want to go through this election alone. I don't want to sit and watch my TV. Can I please come to your house? And I went, wow, what a good idea. Why not come together in a group and watch TV together with some of, you know, and I'm not saying with all, but don't isolate to watch the recordings. If you've got 2 or 3 people you can talk to or be on the phone with or be in a room with that you normally talk to, why not do it as a group?
I think one of the things that you said that's so important is that at the same time that we need to, or at least I feel what's been the only thing that's been working for me is to sort of move more inward and focusing more on what I can control.
Yes.
But at the same time, there's this sense of just feeling like I'm still disconnected and forgetting how much my friends, my family, just being out in the community supported me as a human being. And
yes,
that missing piece is part of where I keep realizing I need to ask for support more often. And it's difficult, I think, for those of us who feel like for the most part everything's okay as it can be, to remember that yes, you're still anxious, and yes, you may need support as well. Maybe you're not homeless, maybe you're not, you know, completely traumatized, but we're all experiencing some form of PTSD.
Sure. So I think being able to breathe for a minute and just stop for a second and say, there's a lot of stuff going on and there's a lot of distress out there. What's happening in my inner heart? And I think that ties into some of the work that you talk about, Irene, often, which is being able to learn how to calm yourself. Can you talk about that?
Sure. It's I do my own self-care every day, and it's a routine I've had for decades. Changed quite a bit over the years, but it's there's so much that you can't control, and what you can control is you and your surroundings to some degree, and have an effect on those around you. And so I count my blessings twice a day, when I go to bed and when I wake up. I'm very grateful for everything that I have, right down to the toothpick to clean my teeth, which I understand may not be as good as some dentists would appreciate. And I live on my little farm, and I'm able to go outside. I'm able to talk to my trees and to the birds, and we don't have any farm animals, but we have lots of activity around us, squirrels and bunnies and birds and all sorts of things. And I give thanks for the big evergreens that protect us from the north wind. I'm grateful that I can. I just turned 80, and I still have lots of physical abilities. I'm not as old as my years physically, and I'm grateful for that. And in the summertime, spring and fall, I'm barefoot, and I walk barefoot on the planet and take in those energies that I know feed us and help the earth be weller than she would if you didn't do it. And we are weller than we are when we do it. So just sitting down, taking a deep breath, relaxing your body as much as you can, relaxing your toes, and then going up to your head, and then feeling your scalp relax and go down to your toes, and just stretching when you get up in the morning, stretching before you go to bed at night as you crawl into your covers, and just snuggling down and saying a last prayer of thanks. And I'm not a religious person, but I certainly am spiritual, and I know that we all are here and interacting because we must. We are here together on this planet, and without her, we're not going to exist. So it's just really important that you take time for yourself and put on some soft, melodious music and drink that in instead of having a bunch of other noise going on in the background to help you relax, to help you stay in that relaxed state. Try not to watch too much of the news. There's lots of wonderful websites and YouTubes that you can watch to bring blood pressure down and to just relax, and there's many different places that you can go on the internet if you have computers and that sort of thing, and I know lots of people don't, who have been displaced in this COVID crisis. And but search out those things, or find a place where you can actually get them if you have that opportunity. And for those of you who are homeless and do have electronics to be able to hear us or to do the things that we're asking you to do, is just be grateful for that which you have. And I know a lot of you have lost a lot, and just endeavor to stay focused and as calm as you can, because the stress and the anxiety and the trauma is not a good place to be. And I know all of you that are traumatized know that. So you are in control to some degree, and you can get yourself, condition yourself to be able to calm yourself down and have less stress in your life. And I encourage you to do that. I used to be very eruptive in anger, and with a lot of anger. And I thought it was I thought I was born with it. Didn't know it was copied learned behavior from my family members. So I know it's possible. I've changed a lot in my life, and I encourage you to do it because it's a lot better life than just, I describe myself before I started looking at who I really was. I describe myself as a cork out in the middle of the ocean, just bobbing around with no direction. So, and I know what my direction is now, and my daily practice helps me stay there and have a completely different life than I did 40 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Irene, because learning to notice the difference between that stuff which is external to us that we cannot control, and that stuff which is internal to us that we can control inside our body emotionally, and then the stuff that we can control, or at least we can mitigate or work with in our surroundings in the context of our lives. So being able to notice there's 3 different kinds of layers. So if you can't control things like what the sheriff does or what the media does or what the cops are doing in Seattle or what the mayor's doing in Seattle, if you can't control what's going on with the campaign itself, if you can't control
Trump's doing, and I mean, over the next couple months, I mean, one of my biggest fears, I'll just, be honest, is the after election. Even if the best case scenario, of course, and from my perspective, is that Biden were to win, then what's going to happen? I have a lot of terror about that, and I think a lot of people do. And so I think that the things that you're talking about, Irene, are so important for us to remember, to bring it down to that, to whatever, like that lowest denominator of remembering to be grateful, because none of us are entitled to anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't make this word entitled to anything, and so sometimes I try to remember that I mean, I'm a brat a little bit. I don't. This isn't happening. That's not happening. And then I think to remember, if you just start at all the things that you said, Irene, and speak to that, like, what am I grateful for? And that will get us through, I think, most anything.
Well, and I think being aware that this too shall pass, because whether Trump gets elected or Biden gets elected, the election itself will have a certain ripple effect. But the things that have gone into this election, like the fact that there's been a lot of angst, and there's been a lot of civil rights issues, and there's been a lot of fear about our personal safety and survival and what's going to happen to us if we go into civil war, or we go into wars with other countries, or all of those things are up here, and we're all worried about them, but we cannot control all that at the moment. The thing we can control is how we are reacting with those people who we love, how we're interacting with those people in our community. And this too shall pass. Now, whether it passes into something worse or something better is not the thing we can deal with at the moment. Over the next 3 to 5 days, if we can recognize that everybody is in hypervigilance, everybody is in hypertrauma, they're dealing with something called complex post-traumatic stress disorder. We're dealing with beliefs that are slamming up against each other. Many people have their families are in conflict, and our people who are first responders at the scene of things, our police officers, our sheriffs, our medical professionals, our mental health care providers, our jailers. And then on the other side, all the people who are trying to help those who are homeless, or helping those who are out of food, or those who are cold. All of us are in stress. So breathing and controlling our own emotional heart rate, and remembering to go into our hearts and be in compassion with those people who may not be reacting right. It reminds me, on the farm, there were times when I had to deal with an animal that was wounded. And there was one time I had a Weimaraner that I was trying to pull the porcupine quills out of his nose. And I'll tell you what, he was one angry, upset Weimaraner. And I literally had to go get, and he wasn't intending to bite me, and he wasn't mad at me, but he was whining and he was hurting. And that happened to be a physical distress, but it was also an emotional distress. because for me, because I was having to hold him down, and I had my legs wrapped around him. I had my brother hanging onto his head. I've got leather gloves on and and a pair of pliers that I'm using to try to grab a hold of his porcupine quills and get him out of his mouth so that he didn't die. I'll tell you what, that guy was upset. And right now, I mean, I know we're not living in particularly with a Weimaraner, but it sort of feels like it. We got a world under chaos.
That's kind of a good metaphor, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and I'd like to speak to that too, because I used to be a very angry person, and I didn't know that everyone had the right to their own opinion.
yeah.
So I was in chaos and stress a lot, and so even though many of us disagree, the other person does have a right to their opinion, and the more that people disagree and stress over the disagreement and speak about the disagreement or the person that they're disagreeing with, the more angst that shows up, the more trauma and stress that shows up. If you can just say, take a deep breath and say, I absolutely disagree with this person. We're going to have to agree to disagree, because they're not going to change their mind, and I'm sure not going to change my mind. And the less anger and frustration and hatred that is sent out to one another, the more healing there will be on the other end. And if you can even, I'm a therapist, and I often tell people to go to their heart center and send love to the people they dislike most. And if we can all do that, there would be far less stress.
Yeah.
And when you disagree with someone and you continue to send that person anger and frustration, then that's what you create more of, in my belief and my experience. So
right, if that's what our focus is on. I mean, that other person isn't feeling all those feelings.
Exactly.
We're visiting all of that on ourselves and upsetting. Yep. And I'm speaking from experience here. So I really don't think I've handled this situation very well myself at all. I've spent quite a bit of time in anger, a lot of time in grief, a lot of time in PTSD, and all of that. But I do think that it's important for us to be able to tell the truth about it and name the problem.
I would agree.
And I think some of the things that you're talking about, again, just like Joy was mentioning, it just helps us to get grounded, just a little bit more grounded. And that's a lot of where I think I felt is a lot of all over the place. And with my own family, I have a lot of family members that, we disagree with a lot of things. We've gone through a lot of stress around those differences. And I know for my own family members, the way I tend to try to end every argument when it comes to politics, although I am never apologetic about my own beliefs, I just say, look, family first.
Yep.
All this is over. I'm still going to be your sister. I'm still going to be your cousin. I'm still going to be your auntie, right? And love prevails no matter what. And that gives me some help in the sense of, that me being all over the place type thing.
Well, you take the politics away and you still have the personality, that person that you love, the person that you grew up with or have a relationship with. So the politics are what's getting in the way. And I fully agree with you that you just have to put it aside.
Well, I think
it's not even discussed in my family. We just do not discuss it.
Well, that's interesting, Irene, because I went through, when I started looking at how do we actually solve this complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and I started looking at how do we actually downsize the crisis and the trauma and the inflammatory conditions that we're dealing with. It's sort of like, you know, our autonomic nervous system works with fight, flight, or freeze. And if that's in our bodies, we do the same thing in our society. And what we've created is in the past, when we get in these tight political, economic, and social situations, we often go to war and go into the fight because that's the way that so many people are trained. I mean, we've got an entire economy that trains people how to go to war. And it's against our natural inclination. And in order to perpetuate war, you actually have to train for it, because most people actually, what they want is to build peace, and they want peace. And yet we're trained to fight. So there's the second side is to flee. Fight, flight, or freeze are the three automatic responses that have been trained. So freezing, when you go silent and you retreat and you hide out and you do nothing, that's a secondary response. And that's often why people go into denial. No, we don't have a problem. No, it's nothing to worry about. We're going to be fine. And so they pretend that, and they go back into default patterns, because a long time ago, it used to work that as long as I avoided it, it would go away. Well, maybe it's not going to go away this time. And that's sort of scary. So
well, I think it never really goes away. It just erupts somewhere else.
Yeah, but at least it goes quiet and you can pretend it's gone. I mean,
well, for a while, yeah.
Yeah, for a while. I mean, denial is one of the things that people do. And then to flee and run away from it is another version. You avoid the whole thing. You never have the conversation. You leave your friends and family and go live in Mexico or go someplace else. You know, these are things that people are thinking about. But in fact, the most valuable place that I have found that we can make a difference is right in our immediate circle of influence. For example, you know, what can we do to help our neighbor? If we get, you know, it's like, again, with that dog, going back to my Weimaraner, you know, I could have let him just suffer and die, because eventually when you get that many porcupine quills in your mouth, they go up through your brain and they kill you. Or I could have taken him to the vet, but I'll tell you what, trying to get the Weimaraner in the truck with 100 porcupine quills in his face could hurt everybody, including me. So it was easier just to take personal action and realize that even if I went to the vet, he was going to have to do the same thing that me and my brother and my dad and mom were going to have to do, which is figure out how to wrap this dog up, how to get leather gloves, and how to keep ourselves as safe as possible while we help him out of his trouble. And so in our particular local situation, we have people who are alone, friends and family who are alone right now, who are going to be going through this election. Why not call them and talk to them about how they're feeling? It's sort of like something I read recently. It was the National Center for Health Statistics in 2020. They just reported that since the COVID crisis and the cultural crisis and the constitutional crisis, not even the election, just since those things are happening, 41%, did an analysis of 18 to 34-year-olds over a 6-day period in June. And they came out and they said that 47.5% of the kids 18 to 34, or adults 18 to 34, reported anxiety and or depression. That's a scary thought. 18 to 34-year-old millennial generation type students, friends, family, children, aunts, or, you know, nephews, grandkids, they're dealing with sincere anxiety and or depression. If that's true, then stop thinking about yourself for a few minutes. That's what I think. And what can I do to relieve the trauma and the depression for my children, my grandchildren? What kind of an example am I setting as a leader in my community, as a parent, as a grandparent? And am I so self-absorbed in my old trauma and my own fear that I'm not paying attention to our grandchildren who are 10 and 12, who are watching the television, watching the brutality, watching the angry, watching the police, watching our president, watching our law enforcement officers and our sheriffs. I mean, I understand today that a sheriff's in one of the cities, I think you told me this, Ava.
I
That there were
did.
people, tell me about that, because that's really the epitome of what are we teaching our children, and how can we mitigate the impact right now over the next few days and de-escalate our own trauma and bring peace, build peace in our families. So can you share that?
Yeah, I'll just have everybody look the link up for themselves, but it was a march that was going to happen from a specific church to the polling place to, you know, for them to do their ballots. And for some reason, they were intercepted by the local sheriff's department. And when they all took a knee, they were pepper sprayed. So everyone needs to look that up for themselves and come to their own conclusions. But sheriff's office response was they did that just to protect them.
They did that to protect the sheriff when the sheriff wasn't even at risk.
No, they did that to protect the people. And so what I said was, I was just like, hey, don't protect me if that's the way you're going to do it.
What
I
do you
don't know
mean?
who they thought. I don't know. Everybody, I think, just needs to look the story up. But it's all over the news right now, that particular story, along with some of the violence that happened, you know, to Joe Biden's campaign bus, you know, just the way that violence is being endorsed. I mean, for the first time in my lifetime, I've seen adults in the main media, people in power, endorsing violence.
Yeah, and see, that's what happens when the civic crisis when you got compound behaviors like this. You can have fights upon fights upon I mean, imagine, if I can spin off of that, imagine that if I had had 3 Weimaraner dogs who I was trying to fix, and they were all in the same room, my God, they'd be attacking each other and basically kill each other. And that's just not acceptable. You know, we need to learn to control ourselves, help ourselves out with the breathing and the food. By the way, here's something that I learned when I was doing a work on flipping the joy switch. I wanted to move people that I was coaching in business and teenagers who were distressed and upset about things, how to move them from fear into courageous action and eventually go on to achieve the goals that they wanted with joy in their heart. Okay. And I found a method that's the body, mind, spirit method. And I started to talk about what can you take in your body? Like, what can you drink? What can you eat that makes you feel calmer? What is the air and the things that you're putting in your body chemically that you can remove so that you're calmer? What can you eat as far as food? What quality of food can you eat? And what kind of music can you listen to? This is one of the things that you had talked about, Irene, at an earlier conversation. It's if you can drink water rather than a lot of, you know, hyper stimulant foods, you're probably better off. If you drink water rather than a bunch of alcohol over the next few days, you're probably going to be better off. If you breathe good air, like going outside and getting a walk and getting some better air instead of living in a stagnant room where you can't, just stepping outside the door and breathing fresh air would be better than sitting in the room taking in all this media. And not drinking so much smoking so many cigarettes or doing any kind of artificial drugs so that you're not messing.
And watching too much television or watching television to excess is a hypnotic event.
Yes. And it creates
when you focus and follow anything for any length of time at all, even as short as a minute, it's a hypnotic. That's why people can't hear you when they're watching television, because they're in a semi-hypnotic trance.
So learning to break that up.
It's very healthy just to get up and go to another room or turn it off for several hours or 2 hours. Start with 1 hour just to break the habit.
And
it's very hypnotic.
doing yoga or breathing exercises and going to interrupt your pattern.
Go get your drink of water that you should be drinking.
Go walk around your house.
Yep.
Walk around the block and then come back in.
Or your apartment building or whatever.
Yeah, or take a bath and just listen to one happy song or turn on one comedy that can just relieve the stress on your brain or your heart or your body. The other thing is, if you have loved ones that you're close to, massaging the shoulders, giving them a back rub, giving them a forehead rub, massaging their hands if their hands are tense and stressed because they've been playing on the computer or, flipping through channels. I mean, people can get, carpal tunnel just from all of their technical apparatuses. So these are all things that can help us downsize the trauma. And the biggest thing that I was going to say is help your neighbor.
Absolutely.
Yeah, getting out of the fear and self-management and self-blame or self-whatever.
And try to talk about something upbeat and not what's on the television or what you've just experienced. Try to get out of that cycle of thinking about it all the time.
Yeah, it's build, lead, or innovate. Help people build something that they need to build or do. Help people figure out how they can get out of whatever mess they're in right now, and help innovate a new way of thinking about, I mean, the fact is there are a couple of good things that happen from COVID. Environmental pollution is down. That's a good thing. Yeah.
Extremely.
And many people around the planet are starting to team up to do good things in their community and start looking for those things that are out there so that it can help you think this too shall pass, and out of this mess, by working together, connected at the heart, without anger at each other, we might be able to truly make a huge shift in our planet, because oftentimes in the middle of chaos comes a new idea.
And many people have raised their own food this summer because they didn't have to go to work every day. And they were able to go outdoors if they had a lawn and turn it into a garden. It's been awesome to watch some of the wonderful things that have happened from this.
So over the next little while, I'm going to start interviewing people that I know locally and across the country, who are experts at dealing with chronic anxiety and depression issues, who are experts at dealing with complex post-traumatic stress disorder conditions themselves. I'm going to interview a woman who has a real strong expertise in how the brain works, and split brain and broken brains work relative to your nervous system. I'm going to interview someone who is working with young people and dealing with their childhood distress and trauma that's coming from kids not being able to play with their friends. The impacts on our younger generations is huge. So I'm going to interview different people, and we're going to post those interviews up here, because I think right now is the time that we, the people, need to step up and help each other. It's people helping people, and helping the first responders and helping the people who legally might be responsible doesn't mean that they know how to deal with that. They've been trained how to deal with car accidents and floods. They've not been trained to deal with tsunamis of complex civic crisis conditions that are imploding our economy and our lifestyles and our futures and how we do business and how we do society. So it's, we've got an inflammatory response in our entire community. And in an inflammatory response, like shock in an accident, what you do is you lay people down. You lift their feet up above their heads so that they can improve circulation and reduce inflammatory response that will kill people. And you make sure that they have water, and you make sure that they're warm. And there's things we can do to help each other. And with compassion and love, we can do it together. Is there anything else you guys want to say?
I'd just like to remind everyone that when you can find compassion for someone, when you can find something that is compatible, and focus on that. And many times the frustration of not liking that person or not liking what that person does will melt away because you found something else to focus on. And just because someone is different doesn't mean they're wrong. And that's something I've noticed, that if people are different, then others often don't want to have anything to do with them. So, and maybe the reason I've noticed that is because I've been different all my life. So, thank you, Joy. I just really appreciate this opportunity, and I wish everybody wellness because we deserve it. And we're gonna be in this, and we're in it together. So let's make the best of it, and be better when we come out the other side. Better being healthier.
Thank you, Irene. I just want to thank both of you for the opportunity to share a little bit, because it actually does help a little bit, like I said earlier, just to name the pain and be honest about it, rather than maybe pretending that we're doing better than we are, which is a little bit of a pattern in our society. Pretend they're doing better than they are doing. Yeah, so I think it's a good time for us to share about how we really are doing, and then follow some of the advice or the suggestions that the two of you put forward. I think that'll help.
You know, in closing, I'd like to spin off of something you said: fake it till you make it. That's one of the biggest things we've been taught in business. And every professional has been taught some form of buck up and look good no matter what. Well, you know what? Sometimes when you're in crisis and trauma, you can't fake it till you make it. And if you do, it's to your detriment. Because the fact is, there are many people who have homes in town who might have 2 or 3 bedrooms, and they might be able to share with one of their friends or family members who is courageously trying to fake it till they make it because their house is going to be repossessed, or their job just made it so they don't have revenue. And so learning how to ask your friends for what did they need, and offering things that you might have spare to share with people who otherwise, and one of the ways to do that is to say, I don't know if you know anybody who is under stress, economic or professional stress right now, who might need a spare room. But, you know, over the next 3 months, if you hear of people, and if they seem to be, you know, people who you know who could actually use help, I wouldn't mind having someone share my home, because it would make me feel safer to have someone else in my house. And maybe, you know, we could team up a little bit and help them so that they don't lose their business, or they don't lose their career, you know, or they don't end up homeless when they're a parent with a child. Because these things, everything that's coming up has ripple effects. And learning how to say, you know what, this has affected me. Thank you, Ava, for saying that. Sharing the pain and the fear, not from a misery standpoint and, oh, ain't it awful, you know, I'm so sad. But from, you know, I genuinely could use some help right now, or I genuinely can give something away or share something right now. Because part of this process, you know, people often say forgiveness, you know, forgive the guy that did the bad thing. Well, you know what? There's another way to look at forgiveness. It's to give forward. It's to give forward your love and your compassion to help each other. In, you know, I grew up in a farm in Eastern Washington, 200 acres, but we were poor. We were really poor. And there were times when we had no electricity. We had no running water ever. I mean, I grew up with no running water, and I had to haul it my whole life. And people would help us, and we would help them. And when the storm hit, everybody forgot their religion, their rank, their class, their whatever, and you just showed up and helped in the storms. And that's sort of what we need to think about here. So forgiving the past. We're here now, right now, in this present. If people are reacting poorly, it may be that they're under really distress and they don't know how to do it any different. Forgive them for their misbehavior. And just, how can I help you? Would you like a glass of water or a blanket or whatever? So watch this space. We're going to end up going through a lot of interviews because I'm going to bring a lot of people forward and see if we can help each other in our community move forward, because our businesses and our employees and our police and the people living in the streets, all of us, we need to get through this together. So thank you both for coming aboard. Thank you, Ava. Thank you, Irene.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.